This is East Asia Tonight.
Good Friday evening. I'm Otelli Edwards. Tonight's top stories from East Asia. Dramatic security standoff in Seoul. Dozens of presidential guards block authorities from arresting impeached President Yoon, with the clock ticking on his arrest warrant, which expires Monday. The South Korean investigators focus on the only surviving section of the burnt-out Jeju airplane, lifting the tail as they race to uncover clues from Sunday's crash. An aviation expert joins us to break it all down. Beijing setting the agenda to spur a faltering economy, announcing a flurry of measures, including a nationwide civil servant pay hike, the first big pay bump in a decade. And U.S. President Joe Biden looks set to block the proposed $15 billion purchase of U.S. steel by Japan's Nippon Steel. The move is to be announced later today. Also in East Asia tonight, cross-strait tensions dramatized. An upcoming TV series from Taiwan imagines what a war with China might look like. How are its producers confronting a subject that's traditionally deemed too sensitive? And Japanese sake making is traditionally a male-dominated line of work. But as demand for the drink booms, manpower shortages loom. Has the time come for the age-old industry to look into hiring more women? We look at the challenges. A dramatic standoff in Seoul as investigators into last month's brief martial law decree attempted to arrest President Yoon Suk-yeol. Presidential guards and soldiers prevented the anti-corruption agency from arresting the impeached leader as thousands of his supporters gather outside his residence. CNA's Lee Myun-suk has more.
A tense standoff outside the presidential residence early on Friday morning as South Korea's anti-corruption agency tried to execute the arrest warrant for President Yoon Suk-yeol. More than 2,000 police officers were deployed to the area, which was crowded with President Yoon's supporters. There were his usual conservative, elderly supporters and also many young people who said they had to come and stop the investigators from carrying out what they said was an illegal act.
모든 과정이 법에 헌법에 맞게 이루어져야 되는데 헌법에 맞지도 않는 과정을 가지고 체포에 지금 현직 대통령을 체포하려는 건데 그거는 굉장히 무리가 있다고 생각하고요. 만약에 체포를 하고 싶으면은 공정한 과정과 적법한 절차에 따라서 체포를 신청해야 된다고 생각합니다.
경호처가 잘 막아줘서 너무 감사하다는 말씀을 드리고 싶고요. 네, 공수처가 아무 수사권도 없고 불법 체포 영장을 가지고 왔기 때문에 당연히 체포가 이루어져서는 안 되고요. 이것들을 많은 시민들이 아셔야 된다고 생각을 합니다.
But there were also protesters calling for President Yoon to be arrested immediately over his short-lived martial law declaration on December 3rd.
향후에 뭐 솔직히 말하면은 큰 기대를 가지고 있지 않아서 계속 이렇게 미적거리다가 잘못되진 않을까 하는 걱정이 조금 더 큰 것 같습니다.
The anti-corruption agency told reporters after withdrawing from the area that they were blocked by a human chain of about 200 people inside, including the presidential guards and soldiers, and that there were scuffles. After a standoff lasting about 6 hours, they suspended the attempt to arrest President Yoon for safety reasons. The investigators had obtained an arrest warrant for the president after he ignored summons to appear for questioning. They also had a warrant to search the presidential residence. But President Yoon's legal team says this is illegal. They cited a law that protects locations potentially linked to military secrets, such as the presidential office and residence, from being subject to a search without the consent of the person in charge. It says trying to arrest a sitting president is also illegal. President Yoon is the sitting president of South Korea. The parliament impeached him on December 14th, but the Constitutional Court has yet to reach a decision. The Constitutional Court has slightly less than 6 months now to decide whether to uphold the impeachment bill and remove President Yoon from office or strike it down and reinstate him. It is set to begin its first official hearing on January 14th. It's unsure what the anti-corruption agency will do next. It says it will review the situation and decide on further action. It's unclear if the agency will try to arrest President Yoon again before the arrest warrant expires after Monday. But these supporters here say if they try again, they too will be back because it is their duty to protect the president of their country. Lim Yeon-suk, CNA, Seoul.
Staying in South Korea, investigators are expecting to find more human remains on the site of the Jeju Air crash as they begin lifting the wreckage of the plane. Large yellow cranes are moving sections of the scorched fuselage and the tail. It's the only part of the aircraft that's relatively intact. Sunday's crash killed everybody on board except 2 crew members, marking the worst aviation disaster on South Korean soil. All 179 victims have been identified, but some of the bodies have yet to be released to family members. Investigators are still taking time to piece the bodies together while also preserving crash site evidence. Now, South Korean acting President Chae Sang-mok has called on authorities to expedite investigations. Now, the exact cause of the disaster is not clear. South Korean police have conducted searches at Muan International Airport and the Jeju Air office to seize evidence related to the disaster, and they've also banned the airline's CEO from leaving the country. Meanwhile, the Transport Ministry has extended inspections of all Boeing 737-800 jets in South Korea by another week as jet engine maker GE joined the probe. It will include additional checks, such as whether airlines had spent sufficient time carrying out maintenance and securing parts for repairs. And for more insights, we are joined now by aviation analyst Jeffrey Thomas. Well, thanks for joining us on a Friday evening, Jeffrey. I just want to touch on some of the latest news lines coming out where a pilot with 7 years at Muan International says that he was never informed of the 2-meter-high, 4-meter-thick concrete mound believed to have caused that explosion. And I'm curious to know what you think. I mean, is it possible that something so large can possibly go unnoticed by experienced pilots?
Look, it is very strange, the comments that have been made, because the mound is where the localizer is, and it has to, the localizer at that airport had to be elevated. Now, for viewers, the localizer is a critical part of the instrument landing system. And at that airport, after the runway ends, the ground drops away, and the localizer has to be raised to be at a certain height. And so that's why that structure is there. Now, there's a lot of confusion because in actual fact, the structure is 300 meters beyond the end of the technical end of the runway. Now, I know the vision shows that part of that overrun is paved, so people think it's part of the runway. It's not. It's part of the overrun. The question then would be asked, well, maybe the overrun area should have been with the new EMAS system, which is engineered material arrestor system, sand or gravel, something like that, instead of a paved section of tarmac, which would have obviously slowed the aeroplane up far quicker than the existing overrun area. But that airport does comply with international standards.
Right. Well, thanks for clarifying about that thick concrete mound there, Jeffrey. Now, I want to talk about South Korea's data extraction capabilities because it seems like there are limitations, right? And they've also made a decision to send the black boxes to the U.S. And I'm wondering, how do you think that's going to affect investigation timeline?
Well, my understanding was that the cockpit voice recorder had been downloaded in South Korea, in Seoul, and they were working on a transcript of that for release. Now, the next thing we heard was the digital flight data recorder, which we knew was damaged, had been taken to Washington, to the NTSB, the American investigator. And now we know that the cockpit voice recorder also is being taken to Washington. Now, this is not unusual because they have all specialist equipment to analyze these two black boxes, but it may well be that the South Korean authorities do still release a transcript of the cockpit voice recorder, but the Americans may well add some particular dynamics to that transcript, some more understanding of some of the things that were going on. So there's a lot to be understood about a cockpit voice recorder, all the sounds, the alarms, and whatnot that's going on, and trying to interpret it and trying to absolutely understand what challenges the pilots were facing.
So the South Korean Transport Ministry, they're estimating a timeline of 6 months to 3 years, based on what comes out of those black boxes. Is that a realistic timeline?
Well, look, in a typical air crash, first of all, the South Koreans, like every other country, have to produce a report within 30 days. Now, that report can simply say, yes, the aeroplane crashed and tragically 179 people died. It needs to just say the basic facts. The interpretation of the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder can take many years. In this case, I do not believe it will take anywhere near that amount of time. I think we will have an understanding of what went on in the cockpit within the next 7 to 10 days at least, because in South Korea, the public is clamoring for answers. The government's under a lot of pressure to give answers because of other political imperatives that are going on in that country. So I would suggest that within 7 to 10 days at the maximum, we will have a transcript of the cockpit voice recorder. And the other thing that's very important is to pass on to all the relevant authorities and other airlines any learnings from this particular tragedy, to say, hey, listen, this is what happened to us, or this is what happened to this crew. You people, you need to know about this particular scenario. So the whole idea is to prevent another such tragedy. So the quicker the information is disseminated, the better.
Okay, so 7 to 10 days for the transcript of recorder, that's what we can expect. But there's also the possibility that the black boxes could be corrupted or incomplete, perhaps. Jeffrey, how then would investigators proceed from there?
Well, look, there's always a possibility, although the black boxes are designed, the inner core of the black boxes, which have the memory chips. So the black box itself could be badly knocked around, the outside of it. But the memory chips inside are secured inside 3 different layers, titanium and other materials. And they are designed to withstand a force of 3,500 times the force of gravity. They're also designed to withstand 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit or 1,100 degrees Celsius. So they're virtually indestructible. Now, yes, there could be some sort of damage, but in the United States and in some other countries, they have the means to extract that data. So I would find it incredible that they could not extract the data necessary to find the cause of this accident.
A really insightful chat there. I learned plenty from you. Thanks so very much for your time and thoughts, aviation analyst Jeffrey Thomas. A time now for a short break, but coming up next on East Asia tonight, Tesla's annual vehicle deliveries decline for the first time in more than a decade, despite a surge of promotional deals. Hello again. Good to have you here on East Asia tonight. Well, it's now time for your business update with Roland Lin. And Roland, I believe Beijing, what's happening there? They're looking determined to reinvigorate the economy in the new year?
That's right, Oseli. Efforts have been going on for a while, but the country's top planning body confident of a recovery this year. China is doubling down on support for the economy by encouraging consumer spending. Recent stimulus measures seem to have largely failed in revitalizing a faltering economy. In its latest efforts, Beijing has reportedly given millions of government workers surprise wage increases. Now, this is the first civil servant pay rise in China since 2015 and is expected to inject between 12 and 20 billion US dollars into the fragile economy. Now, there isn't much clarity yet on how the increase would be funded or what the total costs would be. Chinese leaders agreed last month to run a higher budget deficit equivalent to 4% of GDP this year. Beijing also plans to sharply increase funding from ultra-long treasury bonds in 2025 to spur business investment and consumer spending. State planning officials say the proceeds would be used to fund the new initiatives, and these include a subsidy program for durable goods where consumers can trade in old cars or appliances and buy new ones at a discount, and a separate one that subsidizes large-scale equipment upgrades for businesses. The world's second biggest economy has been struggling to build growth momentum despite a flurry of government support measures, but officials are confident that would change in 2025.
今年宏观政策还有充足的空间，加上宏观调控的手段和经验更加丰富，可以为实现目标提供有力的支撑。总的看，我们对推动今年经济持续回升向好充满信心。
Chinese officials have sketched out more plans to raise government spending. Tan Se-hui has this report.
New year, new resolutions by the Chinese government. China's top state planning officials came together on Friday to lay out the economic roadmap ahead for 2025. Top of mind are ways to support the development of the private economy, improve livelihoods, and boost domestic consumption. They've noted rapid growth in consumer goods and services consumption last year, especially after new measures rolled out in September, and they say potential for consumption is accelerating.
那么展望今年2025年，我认为我国超大规模消费市场这个优势没有改变，消费向好的支撑条件和基本趋势没有改变，消费市场将持续呈现平稳增长的态势也没有改变，所以我们将实施提振消费的专项行动，把促消费和惠民生结合起来。
Officials say promoting income growth and expanding the supply of consumer products and services are part of the measures to strengthen consumption. And that includes rolling out large-scale vocational skills training and relaxing market access restrictions. They're also looking to foster new consumption drivers as well as improve the consumer environment, like reducing national logistics costs. When asked what the economic growth target for 2025 is, they say the goal should reflect a balance between medium and long-term planning while promoting high-quality development. But they acknowledge the challenges and difficulties amid a more complex and volatile external environment, citing geopolitical conflicts and protectionism as factors. Even so, they say they're confident of the country's economy and they will continue to stay open to trade and investment.
开放是中国式现代化的鲜明的标识，我知道你很关心中国的态度。我们的态度呢，就是无论外界环境怎么变，怎么样充满不确定性，中国对外开放的决心和行动都不会变。新的一年呢，我们一定会采取很多新的举措。
More concrete details will likely be announced in March during the annual two sessions of China's top legislature and political advisory body. That's when thousands of lawmakers from across the country come together to approve new policies and government budgets. Tan Se-hui, CNA, Beijing.
China is also expanding consumption subsidies to smartphones and other electronics. Now, there are plans to broaden an existing national trade-in program, which currently includes big-ticket items like cars and home appliances. Chinese consumers in the post-COVID era has begun holding onto their electronic items longer, given a general belt tightening. Investors hope incentives will revive the world's biggest smartphone market and drive sales for domestic brands. They also hope that the incentives will galvanize business on platforms popular with gadget fans like Alibaba and JD.com. The move is part of China's efforts to encourage consumption to offset the effects of any new U.S. tariffs on Chinese exports. That's the nation's key pillar of growth. And despite moves by authorities to shore up support, only Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index managing to end the day higher. The Hang Seng Tech Index, well, that gained by as much as 1.4% earlier, led by a rally in shares of Xiaomi and BYD over efforts to boost consumption. On the mainland, the Shanghai Composite and the Shenzhen component retreated for the day. The onshore yuan, the CNY, weakened past 7.3 to the dollar. That's a level that China had been defending since late last year, making room for the managed currency to slump further amid a sluggish economy. Even after the central bank maintained its support for the currency with its daily reference rate, the renminbi, well, it was allowed to drop by as much as 7.3316 today. US President Joe Biden has reportedly decided to block the proposed $15 billion sale of US steel to Japan's Nippon Steel. The decision is expected to be announced later today by the White House, according to sources cited by the Washington Post and New York Times. The move comes after a review by the Committee on Foreign Investments in the US, which ended in a deadlock over national security concerns. The matter was then referred to Mr. Biden, who formally has until early next week to decide. Now, Mr. Biden's opposition to the deal reflects his stance that U.S. steel should remain domestically owned and operated. President-elect Donald Trump, who takes office later this month, has also vowed to block the deal. Now, the merger would have created the third biggest steel maker in the world, and U.S. Steel previously warned that the deal's failure would risk thousands of union jobs. But the United Steel Workers Union, which opposed the deal, has called those assertions baseless threats and intimidation. Nippon Steel had offered concessions on local leadership and investments, but this failed to sway opponents. Some of Mr. Biden's advisors have warned that blocking the deal could hurt U.S.-Japan relations. Should the deal be formally blocked, well, both companies have signaled plans to pursue legal action. Meanwhile, shares of U.S. Steel and Nippon Steel reacting to the looming announcement. Nippon Steel is currently up 1.18% for the day in Tokyo, and in pre-market trade, well, U.S. Steel is down nearly 8%. That U.S.-China rivalry also playing out in the EV market. Tesla's annual vehicle deliveries dropped for the first time in more than a decade, despite lucrative year-end incentives. The EV giant is under pressure amid tougher competition from Chinese rivals. Tesla sold 1.79 million vehicles last year, slightly less than in 2023, and missing analysts' forecasts. Tesla also failed to meet its goal to achieve slight growth for the year. For the quarter to December, it handed over more than 495,000 cars, also missing analysts' projections despite hitting a record. At the end of the year, Tesla rolled out several promotions to lure customers as it faces a myriad of challenges. But Morgan Stanley analysts attributed the decline to Tesla's aging models and higher availability of cheaper alternatives. The EV maker has also been hit with reduced European subsidies, the popularity of lower-priced hybrid vehicles in the US, and stiff competition, especially from the likes of China's BYD. The Chinese company has narrowed its gap with Tesla last year as the top EV maker globally. It sold 1.76 million battery-powered cars last year and logged a 41% on-year jump in overall annual sales. Shares of Tesla fell 6% on Wall Street. The stock has rallied in recent months, though, on hopes that CEO Elon Musk's close ties with incoming President Trump could help the company's prospects. And that'll do it for business. We'll tell you back to you.
Thanks so very much, Roland. But time now for another break, but coming up next. See how a traditionally taboo subject of war with China is being explored by Taiwan filmmakers for an upcoming TV series. More on that with our correspondent in just a moment. You're watching East Asia Tonight. China setting the agenda to spur a faltering economy, announcing a flurry of measures, including a nationwide civil servant pay hike, the first big pay bump in a decade. South Korean investigators focus on the only surviving section of the burnt-out Jeju Air plane, lifting the tail as they race to uncover clues from Sunday's crash. And a security standoff in Seoul. Dozens of presidential guards blocked authorities from arresting impeached President Yoon, with the clock ticking on his arrest warrant, which expires Monday. The supporters of Mr. Yoon have adopted the slogan, "Stop the Steal," in denouncing the arrest of the president. Thousands of them held a rally near his residence, holding signs with the slogan that you see there. Well, the phrase "Stop the Steal" was made popular by supporters of U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, who insisted that he lost the 2020 election because it was rigged. President Yoon himself has harbored suspicions about election results in South Korea when the opposition Democratic Party dominated the National Assembly in 2020. Mr. Trump has not commented on the situation in South Korea, but Mr. Yoon's supporters hope that the incoming U.S. president will intervene.
트럼프 대통령이 취임을 한다 그러더니 트럼프 대통령도 마찬가지로 지난번 선거에서 본인이 피해를 받기 때문에 우리 국내 우리 한국의 그 어떤 그 부정 선거에 대해서 같이 공감할 수 있을 거기 때문에 큰 기대를 하고 있습니다.
Staying in South Korea, dozens of people have been rescued or evacuated after a fire broke out at a large commercial building in the city of Seongnam. Local media show a building engulfed in black smoke, with fire raging on the lower floors. More than 100 firefighters and 40 vehicles were deployed to the scene. About 50 people managed to evacuate safely, while emergency workers rescued another 40. It's not clear if anyone is still inside the building, which has multiple basement levels. There are currently no reports of serious injuries, though some people are being treated for smoke inhalation. The cause of the fire remains unknown. Now, an upcoming Taiwanese TV drama, 0 Day, promises to show local audiences what a war with China might look like. It's an unprecedented production, confronting a topic that remains too sensitive for many Taiwanese filmmakers. Well, the 10-episode series, which is set to be released in May, has set off quite a bit of buzz in Taiwan, where residents have for many years considered a war with China unlikely. And for more, we are joined now by CNA's Victoria Jen in Taipei. Victoria, 0 Day, I believe, generating quite a bit of buzz as it gears up for its debut this spring in Taiwan. Tell us a little bit more about the TV series.
Well, according to the creators of 0 Day, the TV series aims to stir some important conversations about Taiwan's national security and vulnerabilities in its digital infrastructure. Now, the creators have crafted a fictional narrative that feels all too real, which they're hoping will not just engage viewers, but also serve as a wake-up call. Now, let's take a listen.
我们当初在设想的时候是让大家去仔细去思考的，就是很大的权力，或者是一个可以翻身的机会，或者是一个非常多的金钱的诱惑摆在我们面前。那这个摆在我们面前的同时，是要我们不要说牺牲国家利益，要我们放弃自由民主的生活的时候，那台湾人会怎么选择？
It's interesting to note that the show has a significant budget of $7 million US, primarily supported by the DPP government and Taiwanese businessman Robert Cao, who is known for his strong anti-China stance.
So, Vic, making a film about a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, that's one thing. It's also funded by the DPP government, as you've mentioned, known for its pro-independent stance. So, in a nutshell, this seems like a very controversial production.
That's right. For example, the opposition parties have raised questions about the series' true intentions. And according to one analyst that I spoke with, the series is most certainly not going to help with cross-strait relations.
蓝军会认为这个部分是民进党政府的一个大内宣。那大内宣的一个概念来讲话，它其实蓝军会指称就是说，这个电影里面的一个内容题材是要呼应你民进党执政的一个意识形态或是价值，就是某种程度希望能够去贯彻你民进党的一个意识形态，便于你自己本身的一个统治。那同时呢，就把对岸给做一个负面的一个定位。那这个部分来讲的话，可能也更不利于两岸交流。
Despite the controversy, it's clear that Zero Day has captured significant public attention, with its trailer amassing over 2 million views on YouTube. People I spoke to were telling me that they think the show has sparked broader conversations about national security and the challenges that lie ahead for the island.
我觉得有这样的题材就是蛮正常的，然后当然就我觉得它算是一个就是假设真正发生这件事情的时候呢，它就是一个预测，那内部会怎么处理？如果我本人关于会不会担心打过来的话，我觉得担忧应该都是会有，因为毕竟现在还没有到两岸有完全一个共识出现。那就当然希望不要有战争，然后就希望这件事情不要就是真的电影发生的事情，然后现实当中会发生这样子。
我觉得预告片可能也是因为它是预告片，就是拍的会让人比较紧张一些。但是就是让大众紧张，或者是有一个提醒的作用，我想或许那个是目的。
So Vic, all in it sounds like it's a very challenging show to make. Do we know anything about the cast of Zero Day?
Well, Zero Day didn't have any big-name artists. In fact, the making of the TV series ran into some difficulties, as the creators said that they had trouble casting actors and actresses to star in Zero Day. Many were afraid that they could be blacklisted in China for taking part in the production, as the creators alleged.
当然，过程当中也有人因为中国的压力而退出，因为他们曾经跟我刚刚讲，因为想进中国市场而签了一些限制他们的言论的这个条款。那他们因为这个合约的压力，那中间有几个导演退出了这样。那演员的部分也是，演员的搜寻也是有非常的困难。但是这个我本来就预料到的，就是可能他在中国发展非常好的演员，他们可能的顾虑就会比较多这样。
Now, what the showrunner alleged here is actually not unheard of. It's widely known that to maintain their careers in the lucrative Chinese market, many Taiwanese artists would choose to publicly endorse pro-China sentiments, often through social media posts or participation in state-sponsored events. Conversely, others strive to remain neutral, avoiding explicit political statements to sidestep controversy. However, even this neutrality can be perceived as tacit support for Taiwanese.
Oh, well, I'm afraid we have lost Vic there, probably because of a glitch. We apologize for that. Anyway, that was CNA's Victoria Jen in Taipei. Right, time now to go for another break, but coming up next on East Asia tonight, a look at how volunteers in China are cracking down on the illegal hunting of migratory birds. And how mechanization of sake breweries in Japan is helping to narrow the gender gap in the male-dominated industry. Each spring, millions of migratory birds pass through northeast China in search of food and nesting sites, but a large number is lost to hunters and illegal trade. Well, CNA's No Ordinary Rescue Into the Wild shows you what volunteers in the country are doing to rescue and treat wounded wildlife.
一群在这里。下来一个，看到没？到那边。
我记得12年前，我们是没有意料到还有这么严重的一个候鸟杀戮的现状。用杀戮这个词儿也是一个直观的感受，就是它不是小的这个案例，而是非常集中的在候鸟迁徙的通道的一些关键的位置，用批量式的这种盗猎的方式，所以这个数量是很严重的。
全掐死了啊！看这网多高，他把这个网架成一个三角形，然后用这个干树枝来吸引鸟，鸟上那个干树枝上边了，干树枝和鸟网是一边高的，验的是候鸟啊，就这么给吊死了。
当时因为不是特别重视嘛，因为10年，我感觉10到15这5年，无论各个层面，不管是咱们大众或者是再往上升那些层面也好，就是对野生动物保护这种观念和理念，都不是特别重视。
再见，快，再见，生活最好。再见，再见，再见，再见。
来的时候114克，这就特别瘦弱。我之前嘛就非常喜欢鸟，从小就喜欢，就是那种小孩子就比如说掏鸟窝啊，那个抓小鸟啊啥的，我都干过。就对鸟就特别喜欢，然后长大呢就根据这些鸟的习性什么的，然后就比较愿意翻阅这些书籍了啥的。这不光是中国的书籍，包括外文的书籍，就翻译过来的书我都看过很多。这现在爪是特别有力的，看头一天检查的时候，这有气无力的，一点也不行啊。春季和秋季就是鸟类大批迁徙。大批迁徙的时候，就是非法捕猎者就特别多，然后受伤的鸟也就特别多。在救的过程中吧，就是当你越救越多的时候，就是当年就是没处可送去。当时就你想找一个鸟类的救助机构非常难，没办法就抄起书本就学呗。就是人怎么说呢？既然你喜欢，你就努力呗。
这个网上，国家2级的红鸟礁，还有这么多的鸟尸体，全是死的呀。多少生命？
Well, if you fancy watching the full episode and more of CNA's No Ordinary Rescue series on CNA.Asia, you can catch it on MeWatch as well as YouTube. Now, to see more, well, what I want to talk about next is Japan's sake industry that's hoping for a lift in exports, particularly to Asia and the United States, after UNESCO added the rice wine brewing process to its intangible cultural heritage list. But its traditionally male workforce in Japan can't keep up with the global demand, leaving room for women to enter the industry.
Mie Takahashi is one of only 33 female sake brewers, or toji, in Japan's 1,000-plus breweries. A far cry from Japan's Edo period, when an unspoken rule barred women from breweries, and they continued to be largely excluded from sake production until after World War II. But as the popularity of sake booms globally and domestic competition in the alcoholic beverage market becomes fierce, Ms. Takahashi's vision to ride the challenges comes from deep within.
よく言うのは、蔵の中がギスギスしてたらギスギスした酒になるし、蔵の中うまく丸くいってれば丸い酒になるみたいな、そういう作ってる人の感じが出るみたいな。基本男社会なので、そうですね。でもあんまり今は性別にこだわらずにやっている方が多いと思いますね。やりたい人がやるっていうか、はい。
Ms. Takahashi helms the Koten Brewery along with her CEO brother Isao. Their pride is running their family's 150-year-old brewery in Nagano Prefecture, at a time many smaller breweries are struggling to find successors. The siblings split the work. Ms. Takahashi oversees the labor-intensive production, while her brother promotes his sister's creations, both in Japan and abroad.
基本的な種類は全てありながら、で妹が低アルコールをやってみたいとか、新しい酵母を使ってみたいと、いろんな新しい技術も入ってきます。そして何より兄弟でやってますから、妹が作りたいと思う酒はみんな作らせてあげて一生懸命売ろうと思ってます。
It's hoped these creative Mie specials can help the duo better adapt to modern tastes outside of their signature dry sake. It's not just talent and innovation that sets Ms. Takahashi apart in the male-dominated sake industry. She believes mechanization helps narrow the gender gap. This crane lifts hundreds of kilograms of steamed rice in batches onto a cooling conveyor, after which the grains are sucked through a hose into a room to cultivate rice mold. Just the start of many steps to go until the drink's bottled, each carrying Ms. Takahashi's ambition to push sake's popularity both domestically and abroad.
Well, some news outside of East Asia. Kenyan officials are investigating a metallic object that crashed into a village amid concerns over space junk falling back to Earth as debris.
A large metallic object crashed into Kenya's Mukuku village on Tuesday. Officials believe it is space junk from a rocket's launch vehicle. The item weighs over 1,000 pounds and measures about 8 feet in diameter. The Kenya Space Agency, or KSA, assessed the debris in the crash site in Makueni County. Here's KSA officer Major Aloys Weir.
It is a part of a space object, which is in form of a ring, a metallic ring, possibly from a rocket separation stage.
Officers retrieved fragments from the site for further analysis and to investigate the origin of the fallen object.
We are to assess the impact to the area, identify whose space object it is, so that we can use the existing legal mechanisms under international law, as far as the Outer Space Treaty is concerned, to look and to find a way to first get the person and bring him to the responsibility of his space object.
The KSA said the debris does not pose an immediate threat to safety. There were no casualties and no significant damage was reported. There's growing concern around increased global space activities and the rise of man-made objects in the Earth's orbit. That's led experts and governments to highlight the potential risks associated with space junk, including incidents like this one when debris falls back to Earth.
Well, it's no Jurassic Park, but a quarry in the UK may have once been a hotspot for dinosaurs. Researchers have uncovered 200 dinosaur footprints dating all the way back to 166 million years ago. 5 extensive trackways were found in an Oxfordshire dig site in southern England. 4 of them were by gigantic, long-necked herbivorous dinosaurs called sauropods. The scientists believe it is most likely the 18-meter-long Cetiosaurus. The 5th track, though, was by the carnivorous dinosaur Megalosaurus. 2 different types of footprints crossed over at one point, raising questions on possible interactions between the 2 dinosaurs.
It's actually one of the largest dinosaur track sites anywhere in the world. And it has these incredibly long dinosaur trackways, so some of these are stretching well over 150 meters. So this is really unusual. We don't find this kind of preservation, these very extensive trackways, very commonly. So it's a really special place.
And ahead on Asia tonight, here are some of the stories we will also be covering. South Korea's acting president, Choi, has vowed to continue trilateral cooperation with Japan and the U.S. He maintains that his country's diplomacy remains steadfast despite an unprecedented political crisis at home. The Philippines planning to deport more than 11,000 workers of Philippine offshore gaming operators who are still in the country. Well, this follows the close of a deadline announced by President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. in July last year, asking POGO operators to wind up operations by the end of 2024. And Thai Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra revealed that she has more than $400 million in assets after she was obliged to declare her assets and liabilities to the National Anti-Corruption Commission. These stories and more on Asia tonight, 8 p.m. Singapore, Hong Kong time, right here on CNA. And that's all we've got for you for East Asia Tonight on Friday. Don't forget your headlines anytime at cna.asia, and you can always find us on Facebook and on YouTube. Really appreciate your company. Have a great weekend.